All right. We're live, Ed.
Oh, so good to see you, though.
It's good to see you too. I feel like I'm going crazy over here on my own.
You're not alone, Zoe.
I know, but I feel it. With all the stuff coming up, I feel like I'm alone with all of that.
Yeah, well, you are in a way, I suppose.
Yeah.
No one else is going to go through that same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. World War II, hey?
Yeah, that's it. I had an image of like the realm of like of the emotions as like stepping on mines, and like we're sneaking through this territory that's just been laden with like old mines and old bombs that haven't gone off yet.
Yeah.
Like they didn't go off in our parents, they didn't go off in our parents, and now we're here and we're like walking through the jungle like it's Vietnam War. Just like, where's the next booby trap? Fuck. And it's like we feel like we're at war with the natives, like the native aspect of ourselves that is that set the booby traps to fuck us up, but just because he's pissed off and that. But they're actually really nice people.
Yeah, it feels like booby trap after booby trap, but there's no boobies. So it's just it's nowhere near as fun. It's just trap after trap. At least if there was if there were some nice boobies around, then things would be a bit better.
Well, maybe they are. Maybe that's why they're called booby traps, because they look like boobies, and we go to them thinking we're going to get some warm milk out of it, but instead it's just like dirty blood.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh. Are we doing a podcast?
I think we're doing a podcast. Yeah, we're doing a podcast.
Oh, right, no.
But, we're just warming into it. We're warming into it. It's just a smooth transition from talking into podcasting.
Yeah.
Maybe we can feel into the way we want to start. We could either have a share first if we wanted to, or we could just go straight into it.
Yeah, we can just go straight into it. How do you feel?
Yeah, I feel like we can go straight into it.
Yeah, I feel like maybe we already have.
The only thing I'm concerned about is if this drilling keeps happening, but it sounds like it's stopped for now.
It feels like it has.
Okay, so let's pray.
Pass it over to a higher mind.
Yes. Oh, so just welcoming ourselves into this space, this physical space, this virtual space, this psychological space, emotional space, mental space, energetic space, spiritual space. This space which connects us all, which connects all things. To everyone listening to this right now, and to ourselves speaking this right now, all is happening in this exact moment, this connection right here, tuning in. And we are here today to speak of our ancestors and ancestral healing. Like the drill that drills on and on, our ancestral ties live on and on. And there's no getting away from them. There's no getting away from them because they are a part of us. And everything we think, everything we feel, everything we say and do, all comes from our ancestors, from the spirit of our ancestors, the prayers of our ancestors, the lives of our ancestors. They live through us. We are them. We are the flowering of them. And yeah, me and Ed are both here today because we feel passionate to speak about this subject. Both of us are experiencing ancestral healing in very different ways. And so we felt to speak about this. So welcome to myself, Zoe Colombo, and to Edward Thompson. Namaste. Namaste.
Namaste. Namaste.
Namaste.
Oh.
That's good
to be here, and that drilling, I think, is timely and appropriate for the conversation.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, I can feel it like igniting something in me.
Drilling for what? Attention. Gold.
Yeah.
Frustration.
Perfection.
Sounds like an angry wasp.
I think it's like beauty is pain. It's like, let's make the garden spick and span and drill away.
It's like going to the dentist to get your teeth cleaned, and it's that noise that you feel good afterward, like you got clean teeth maybe, but
in the process
it's actually quite uncomfortable. And
exactly like ancestral healing.
Whoa.
Exactly. Afterwards you're all spick and span and you feel great, but in the process it's very uncomfortable.
Yeah, feels like going through a world, like a dark world where there's so much that's happened, but there's not always that many lights on. There's not that many torches burning. Every now and again there'll be one, and it feels like it feels like the more I think I know what I'm doing, the more lost I am in the process, and the more I realize I'm lost, the more I start like waking up in the dream a little bit and realizing that I can create lights and I can explore areas and yeah. That's how I feel at the moment. Like I realize how much I don't know really what's going on, but it's kind of liberating and feels like I'm finally starting to wake up to a level of freedom.
Yeah.
And just noticing.
Yeah, I mean, it's felt like revolutionary to me to realize that a lot of the torment that I go through, thought patterns, negative beliefs, limiting beliefs, even just ways that I like feel about myself or about what my environment, and these deep wounds that I have is just can be traced back. And it feels like it does feel like a challenge, like a challenging task to be the one that has figured this out. It's like my, grandmother and my mother and me, and it's like I know what's happened in at least those 2 generations of lives, and I know my mum, you know, didn't manage to clear it, because she's had psychosis, and that is, you know, for me very much an indication of trauma in the body that has not been able to be safely released, and so that energy is like built up and just exploded because the body can't take it. And in the process of being with my mum, through this experience, it has basically ripped me open, and everything has started to come out, and deepening the connection to spirit and receiving insight on and asking where this is coming from. It's just becoming so clear where it's coming from. Like even today, you know, I was crying on the floor because Chris, my partner, left the house this morning when I was I'm processing this pain from that of my mum's, from all the trauma that's happened through her being hospitalized and me witnessing it. And you know, that's coming up, and then Chris left, and I'm going into this big pain response, which is feeling of complete abandonment, that I'm totally alone. And I've had this a lot. It's feeling abandoned, feeling alone, really alone. And for the whole of my life, you know, I've thought this is just something, this is me. You know, what is this? I don't know. This is me. This is my pain. And then in discovering my mum, my mum's mum, my grandmother, left them when my mum was 2 years old, left them for 6 whole months. There was 4 kids, and they were with, you know, it was cool, like they were in a crazy, like kind of cult-ish situation with my granddad, who had like multiple partners, and they weren't looked after by the other partners because there was jealousy, and so they were just abandoned by their mum. Then I found out my granddad was abandoned in hospital for 6 years between the age of 4 and 10. So it's like this pain of being alone, like being so alone, and like missing parents. Like I miss my mum so much because she's emotionally abandoned me through her suffering, through her not being able to be there for me and hold space for me, because she's going through her suffering to the point where it's like made her, you know, she's become what the Western world would call mentally ill, but it is, you know, just part of that. And it's a relief to me to realize that this is all coming through from so many generations. It's like all of this pain that I'm feeling, it's not mine, but it also feels like such a burden to be so awake and to be able to be receiving through intuition and symbols and images from spirit. I'm seeing, you know, my grandmother and my granddad, and seeing this and hearing these stories from my mum. It's such a burden to feel like I am the one that's clearing it. But it's like, so it's like, cheers God for this mighty task of being the ancestral lineage clearer of my family. But you know, also I'm told by many people it's a massive gift. It's a massive gift to feel and have this pain. So, you know, this is kind of where I'm at right now. You know, I'm in it, which is why it's really good that we're talking about this and bringing awareness to the subject whilst it's actually happening.
Well, thanks for sharing that, and that last bit, especially because I'm feeling it in me as well. And although I can't put words to it necessarily, like you've just done there, but even just to say, like, I can feel it moving inside me. and then like questioning whether I'm even fit to be on a podcast right now, or if I need to, go into it or whatever. And like, am I even conscious enough to have this conversation? Oh dear. A question arose for you, and for me. A question arose for me to ask you is, like, okay, I've heard it's a gift too, like the gold in the shadow, and the enlightenment process is all about going into the dark and seeing what's there with your light. And so I suppose the question is, well, okay, we acknowledge, this is what I'm hearing, is that we acknowledge that we're here, and how do we navigate that process when our own mind is conditioned out of that place? Our own mind, as we're conscious of it, is arising out of the subconscious, which is full of all of this dysfunctional seeming history that's kind of imprinted in our DNA, and it's just constantly being expressed, like the drill noise in the background. It's just like when that's at our forefront, and it's seemingly so irritating and frustrating, and it feels like we feel like blaming the universe for giving me this load of shit. But what is that voice that's blaming? What voice is that? Is that also part of the same problem? And so where do we go from there?
Yeah, I totally hear you. And that's why it can become a soup where you do feel not conscious enough, because it's so multi-layered and winding with itself. It almost like is looping back on itself. And I feel like, this is part of it as well, because what this is lack of space holding from elders. So what's happening is, we are holding ourselves. We are holding ourselves, and the lack of the space holding means that, because that holding hasn't been received, even the holding in which we are holding ourselves is coming from this lack of holding. So it's like, yeah, it's this growing into being the elders, where we are holding ourselves through all of this, and also hopefully receiving the support from others who have been through this, or who can hold space for this, because then that gives our minds a reference point to another mind who can gift back compassionate presence towards everything. Because I think it becomes hard for our younger generation, who are going through all of this basically on our own, this ancestral healing task. It's like we need people, we need other people to help us with this, and there is definitely, I feel like, a calling now in this new earth creation that we are going into, a calling for this deepening connection with our families, and with this holding, and with this, it feels like that's what wants to emerge, and that's what was. And we've somehow through all this trauma that has repeated itself through generations and become intergenerational trauma, to the point where it's so messy and sticky, it's so enmeshed. And there is a clearing that wants to happen into this new earth, and so that we can be with each other generationally through this process, clearing this process. And perhaps with us, it's going to gradually unfold to the point where we do have more and more clarity, and you know, more and more holding from a place of compassionate presence rather than more traumatized layers, which are like, oh, I can't deal with this. This is too much. And like, what do I do? And or all these parts which are present, which are present, you know? Yeah. And I do really feel it in my heart, like this support. It's like this support which wants to come through. Yeah.
As you were speaking, I felt like, well, how would I find support in places where it doesn't seem like there is any support there? And how can I use my imagination and my creativeness as best as I can to find support by focusing on where the support is and allowing my mind to be surrendered to the fact that this problem that we're all facing is not going to be solved by any one of us alone. And so, like, maybe my grandma has wisdom, maybe my dad had wisdom, but it hadn't no language to it. A bit like the trauma that has no language to it, that we can't process when it happens, the pain and loneliness, the suffering that we go through, and have no wise caring person around us to help us realize that we're safe and that we're loved, and that experience isn't necessarily our future. And I feel like part of my pull at the moment is to find words and find meaning and find wisdom in my ancestors' experiences through observation and through relaxing my body enough to not energize the pattern so that I'm not in it, but I can still observe it. And from that place, I've been feeling a lot freer from the trauma and more compassion and less resentment in my heart, and more compassion coming naturally, because I can see that there's this natural progression. There was evolution down the line. There was evolution from my dad's dad to my dad's, my great granddad, all the way down to me. There was evolution through my grandma to my mum. There were shifts. And so although they didn't have the language, or they didn't have the full capacity to shift everything for us, there is enough of a shift there that maybe it's our inner child who's wounded that's stopping us from healing now.
Yeah,
because he's still afraid, and he's still alone, and he's still hurt by it. And when we're stuck in that reality, we can't actually see the love that was given and the shifts that were made. So it's definitely feels like a pruning, a real letting go, and a real time of stepping back, just simply stepping back from everything. From once we know it's there, once I know the emotions there, once I know the negativity's there, once I know the patterns there, just take a step back from it and realize that this is nothing. Like, this is how it's meant to be, and that just keep peeling the layers, keep going back, keep taking another step back. Every time something feels like it's not working, or there's a waiting, or there's a stuckness, just keep going back behind that. And keep letting go of attachment to any layer of judgment on the process, any preconceived doubt or judgment or ideas about what it means, kind of like any holding on, because although we're trying to figure it out and analyze it, if we're in the same place, in the same emotional state, trying to analyze it, then we just go round in circles. And so it's like, how do we level up? How do we spiral up?
Yeah, and I feel like, I mean, the real teaching is to be with the feeling, like 100%, because when we notice those patterns coming up, and it's often because there is a very uncomfortable feeling there that we don't want to feel. And the more we're able to be with it, because for example, our mind can say it's stuck, you know, but it's not stuck. It's almost like we stick it down. But actually, when we feel it, it could be this like sludgy, gloopy feeling. It's like this debris which is like collected in us, you know, and it wants to move and come out, but it's like it has its own essence and its own, you know, viscosity, and we can't just, you know, throw it all up in a split second, even though we want to. Sometimes we have to sit with these feelings for a while, and that's really you know, what I have felt like with this. It's sitting with these really uncomfortable feelings, and they do eventually shift and change. And yeah, I definitely agree with you. A lot of the suffering with it is the little child in there who, you know, feels alone with this, that feels alone. And yeah, someone said to me recently, it's like a almost like this healing where we don't even need to call it trauma. And I thought this was really amazing. It's like, it's just separation. It's just like separating from your family. It's like becoming an adult and being like, this is yours and this is me. And it's like, this is everything that's happened so far, and this is my creative expression of like what I want to go into. And it's like, in kind of meeting all of this, we then kind of can make a choice to go on as our own unique expression, because of course we are all of this behind us, you know, all these ancestors behind us. We are all of this, but we are also we're creating something new. We're creating something new, you know. And yeah, I wonder if it is a case of just like being with the uncomfortable feelings.
Yeah. And I would go one step further and say, why call them uncomfortable?
Yeah.
Yeah, like if you're stuck in the mud, you see a child stuck in the mud and he's having a tantrum, you think, well, is it possible that that kid could be rolling around in the mud having a great time? And
Yeah.
yeah, like saying stuck in the mud versus saying bathing in the mud, saying whatever. I feel like perhaps the perspective might, yeah, the perspective and the attitude might just be, whatever I think I know about this is coming from a mind that hasn't yet solved the problem or hasn't yet moved on from this. So why don't I just lay down whatever I perceive this to be and open up to another perspective, open up to another way of experiencing this, and maybe looking for being with the emotion in an open way, in a way where we're not even trying to be with anything. We're allowing whatever comes to come, and not like cleaning ourselves of any attitude, any thought, any perception that arises that is non-accepting, is not accepting of another person, is non-accepting of ourselves, is non-accepting of a situation, non-accepting of a feeling, non-accepting of a thought, non-accepting of anything. Well, that, yeah, it's like the Wetico virus of the mind. It's kind of, it's not something that can be stopped through the same level of awareness that it was created from. So maybe it's a really simple solution. Maybe it's really,
I know what it is.
So simple.
Yeah, I know what it is.
It's a second away. It's like it's not even any time away.
It is just, do you know what it is? It's because we're so conditioned in this human way to be this mind, to be this person, to think like this, to do like this. So we don't allow the energy to just purely move through us how it wants to be. And it's like what you said, then you don't need to be with it. You just be it. You just be it. And it has no words. It has no words. It's just pure feeling. It's pure energy. And it just wants to move and just be expressed. And a lot of the time it looks weird. And that's why we don't, it's much harder for it to just move and express itself, because we've boxed ourselves in to this way that we are as humans, when it just wants to come out in like growling, prowling around, whatever it is, like, it just wants to come out like that. And our lives, generally speaking, our lives haven't, been, we haven't had that kind of reference even to just how to be like that, and so like it feels like it's so easy, because it's just our essential nature of just being as a human animal, as a creature. That's what came to me when you were talking.
Yeah, I feel like that's opened up another doorway into a place that feels really like just that we've been brought up in a culture of schooling and of work that's generated from a really, really narrow perspective of human potential.
Totally.
Really narrow. And education has not been about expanding the mind. It's been about narrowing the mind. Now that's fine. Like, I think narrowing the mind is a part of education, but it's only one pattern. It's like, out of all the patterns that exist in nature and in the universe, all the geometry and all the power, the possible power that comes through certain networks and certain weaves and certain different types of styles of building, that nature displays to us, different ways it creates plants and animals, we as humans have learned how to dissect in a very dissect just using one kind of way. Like, we're just going to look at this one aspect and we're going to go deep into it. And so we've got a culture and a society.
Like,
what's that?
Very masculine, like
very
cut with the knife. Like, this is it. This is the path. You know, like Western science. You know, let's go.
Yeah, and then what we're left with is a deeply fragmented perspective, which actually I feel is fine. Yet it's not fine if the story doesn't come home again, where we've fragmented everything. Now, great job. Now let's put it back together creatively. Let's see the interconnection. Let's understand each component as a living entity. You know, like you're saying, trauma and separation. Maybe what we've done is not just a load of trauma. Maybe it's just a load of separation. And now we're at a point in time where we're all free now to realize that all the trauma in me has made me separate, which means I'm coming out of a process of individuation that has spanned many lifetimes, self-actualization that's come from many lifetimes, that you could say is just ancestral or whatever your viewpoint is. But the point being that the language that we're using to describe it is either empowering and holistic, or it's narrow as well. Maybe the language about trauma is coming from the same paradigm again. Maybe it's coming from a same narrow, trying to dissect it even more. We're trying to, where are we going to go next with trauma? How are we going to dissect it even more? You know, which is fine, because the deeper we go with the knife, the more we respect individual components of life, and the more we create opportunity for family units to separate out and become greater families, so that I can start a family because I can separate out. So maybe it's all degrees of freedom, but it's a lot of responsibility and a lot of power, because we have to learn to relate with compassion and empathy to many, many aspects that we haven't met before, because before we've all been unified. We didn't know that we were different, but now we've got this opportunity to be unique and to be free from our parents' conditioning, from society's conditioning, from nature's conditioning. You know, we're not Amazon jungle men. You know, we're not tied with the magic of the nature. We're free from that now.
Yeah,
we don't have to be. Yeah, but we now have an opportunity to rebuild it from scratch. So
yeah,
that's a challenge. And that's
yeah, and I've like, it's so interesting, because simultaneous as this healing experience has been, you know, reverberating through my being, is I'm more aware of language now. Like, how can we speak about this experience in an expansive and unifying way, like, rather than, but anyway, you know, like you said, there's like the narrowing, but it feels like there's also the expanding, because at the same time as I've been going through this healing experience, I've really been connecting with the wider universe and universes out there, like the other the other places that exist apart from planet Earth. And I've been connecting with that, and connecting with how I'm connected as a soul, like, because obviously there is this conception of ourselves as a unique soul, if that's just, you know, this unique ecological niche on planet Earth, or as a unique soul in the, you know, giant matrix of source consciousness. you know, there's this conception of being a unique soul, but there's also, you know, it's paradoxical. There's also the you know, equal opposite of being connected to everything, you know. So it's like this micro and this macro, they're the inversion of each other. So perhaps by even going in, you know, we actually do start to see out at the same time. And, you know, what if we can unify this whole movement, because that's what we are this movement of contraction and expansion, of unity and you know, seeming separation. It's seems like yeah, the unification of this paradox of being both almost seems like it wants to come through. Or is it more apt to identify with the oneness and less with the individualization, even though that's how we experience ourselves in some way? It may be through the mind, maybe that's how we experience ourselves, through the mind. But when we are maybe not so much in the mind, when we don't have these kind of patterns and everything here, perhaps we would realize ourselves more as this expansion, as this unified conscious field that we're both in right now.
Well said. I got the number 3 coming in, and just like once we recognize we are the oneness, or we have a sense of oneness in our experience, and we've managed to maintain the experience of earth and the material, and we maintain an experience of ourself in between those two, then it's like flying a spaceship between. We're like we start becoming the weavers. We start having the two threads that we're weaving, that is the one field that we have an awareness of, and we also have the awareness of separation, and we have ourself, and we have greater when we can hold those opposites within ourselves, and be with the opposites at the same time, then whatever we create in that moment, whether it's just our state of self, or whether it's a relationship with another person, or whether it's relationship to another entity or plant, or our home, our family, whatever it is, if we can maintain that dynamic, then it's like we like it feels like what else is there, you know, what
Wow.
Yeah, what else is there to do than just to come to that realization?
Yeah.
And to then create and get to know ourselves better and better and better and better as we build relationship from that place. I can get to know Zoe better the more I interact with you, but and I'll get to know you more and more in it through that way. But the you will be, the you is the same as what I am, but you're creating through a different way because you've got free will, and I'm creating through a different way. So there, where we've got creativity, and we've got opportunity to create from a place of real relatedness, and yet uniqueness and unknowing and mystery, and yet we also know. It's like we're creating through paradox, through awareness of the paradox.
Yeah, like right now.
This is how we're doing the podcast.
Yeah, we don't know what's coming out, but we kind of know that we're doing a podcast.
this is the podcast theme. This is the theme. This is the paradox podcast. That's what I'm going to call my podcast, Paradox Podcast. That's the
yeah. Wow. Well, it feels really good to connect with this. Maybe what I feel like what's coming is that the support that we were speaking about earlier on in the conversation, and that narrowing that of what is called trauma healing or ancestral healing, that narrowing, maybe there is a big supportive holding in the going into the opposite of this expansion and oneness and the creation of the new creativity, because I'm feeling like a lot better having just had this conversation, and I'm wondering if we have the medicine. We are the medicine.
I would agree. I would say there's a place in the middle that medicine is made. Medicine is like I've definitely heard people saying it's about wholeness. And so, for example, to ground, to give that statement that we were saying earlier, which was very kind of far out there, like cosmic spiritual oneness, into a practical example, would be, that on one hand we can look to go deeper into a subject like ancestral pain and what happened to my dad's dad and my mum's dad, and that's been really helpful for me to differentiate. I didn't know that my great granddad had, his wife died in childbirth. Like that's knowledge I'm pleased to know. And the pain that came with that, and the pain that got passed down. So that's on one side, and then I can start to observe how the shame and the negativity that got passed through and spiraled off from that, alcoholism and depression and anxiety and toxic shame. Now that's all in me, but I know where it started. I know it started in this simple seed. And so there's a lot of pain in that. There's so much pain and there's so much sadness and grief and trauma. And then on the other hand, I've got this ability to now relate to people, because from a perspective beforehand, I'm like looking at people that I don't really know, and I'm thinking they're acting a bit weird, when I didn't recognize this within myself, I wasn't recognizing it in anyone else. So what was coming up was just judgment, was just criticism, was just more maybe prejudice and judgment about other people. But now, when I realize that if I'm being judgmental about others, really, I'm starting to realize I'm just blind to where we share the same pain. So now I can love people at any distance when I hear their story, or when I see them acting out in a painful way, even if that painful way is like abusive and traumatic. I can start to end that cycle from the very first step, which is through my own perception. And so maybe as this spreads out through society, our judges, our prisoners, like the whole of our society, our doctors, our nurses, we can start to be compassionate to everyone and anyone, the more we know ourselves.
Yeah.
And then the more appropriate our response can be. So that we don't have hospitals full of people who you know, maybe they're not in the right place, prisons full of people, maybe they're not in the right place. People can start to find their right place in their right relationship, and we can all start to help each other to heal through that, and we become a really strong web, and we move as this individualized, self-actualized, but super duper compassionate organism that is just like starting to dance now. You know, we're starting to shake it off, and we're starting to sing, and we're starting to like accept each and every other person's uniqueness. And in that process, if we start to feel it popping up again, and we're like, oh, I notice myself being judgmental again, boom, suddenly, you know, suddenly that it doesn't last very long, because you're reconnecting. You've got the threads, you've got the pathways of friendship and of appreciation of one another, and it's like the net that we're weaving together means that we don't have to let anyone fall through again. You know, we don't have to let people fall through, you know, and we can capture them. And then our place in this whole cosmos becomes a place where we've weaved this beautiful net, and we continue to weave it, and we continue to catch souls around the universe and help them to realize what it means to be in compassion.
Yes, that is it. That is it. This is the new earth and the golden age, and what's coming through for humans. It's like the seeds have been sown in us. We are here. We are awakening. We are healing. We are coming into compassion within ourselves, and that's just going to spread and start to be seen on the outside. And you know, that's why there is, I feel, at least this is how I feel, is that healing, the healing what's within, this wounding, this pain, this suffering, and these experiences that have been felt and carried into our bodies through our ancestors and through our own lives, is so valuable, so valuable to be with, to be with this, to love it until there's a fusion, there's a, you know, there's a metamorphosis, and it just transforms and transmutes into loving kindness. And I feel like from going within, we then flower out, and it's this beautiful movement. And yeah, so there's definitely so much value in it, which is good to recognize and realize when in the process of it, because it can feel all sorts of things. But it's, you know, in feeling these feelings, we are actually not just doing it for ourselves, we're doing it for the whole earth and the whole universe and the multiverse, and, you know, however far on our imagination can extend.
Yeah, I'm looking at an apple tree outside, and I got the image of the earth and the poles and the movement of energy that goes round and creates this field that you know, is being created through the poles, and this movement of going within to without and not getting stuck between the two, realizing that every time we go in, there is a natural coming out. And so yeah, and every, like, I feel like the real practical bit that just popped into my head is that whenever, if we can notice and use negativity, emotion that is disturbing as an alarm clock, if we can start to, this is how I'm perceiving it at the moment, if we can start to work with things as they arise, what might happen is it drops below the conscious mind. It's like when you train in a sport, there's a phase where you have to become crap at what you're doing because you're trying to do it, and that's uncomfortable and you feel awkward and whatever, and that's when you need someone to support you, to say, yeah, you're doing fine, it's natural, it's part of the process. After a while, it bypasses your conscious mind and it's in your nervous system. It's just who you are. It's just how, you know, you don't have to think how to pick up a spoon and put it in your mouth and eat, because you've learned it. But when you're a baby, doing that was probably like, what am I doing here then? You know? And so this whole process that we're going through is, you know, it's just once we master it, it's going to be part of who we are. We're not going to think about it. So I feel like the more presence we can put to the learning process we're in, realizing that the goal is to forget consciously, so that we no longer have to try. So there's no longer a split between the part of ourselves that thinks we should be doing one thing and the part of ourselves that's actually doing another thing. Over time, every time something negative happens, like in ourselves or around us, we can go, oh, wait a second. This is the time I've got to remember to do something. This is a time where I'm tingling. And if we can just program the stops, like we don't have to do anything, just program the stops. Just go, oh, stop. No, don't. Oh, wait a second. Just stop. And they're like, they're micro. There's so many that go on in the day that if we can catch them at the micro level, then we don't have to catch them at the macro level. We don't have to wait until we're having a really bad time. We don't have to wait until the emotions are over the top of us, or that I've, you know, spent all my money, or I've eaten 10 cakes or whatever it is, or I've smoked too much weed or whatever. If we can catch it really before, when it's just a baby seed, like when you're going into the garden, if you try and dig out a massive pine tree, you know how hard it's going to be to get the root system out of that thing. If you just pull a pine cone out of the ground and throw it and put it into the fire, there's no tree, there's never going to be a tree there. So it's kind of like, maybe it's learning how to prune away at things, learn how to recognize them as they appear and stop them from growing, and make that a subconscious pattern, so that we become proficient gardeners. We become proficient at balancing growth and destruction. We become okay with saying no to things. I don't want to experience that anymore. But maybe if we're in a massive forest and we're like, no, I don't want to be in a forest, it's kind of really overwhelming to say, I've got to try and chop all these trees down and all that kind of malarkey. And that's where we are as a collective, perhaps, that, you know, we've got to be creative about the problems that surround us and make something interesting out of it. And for the future, continue to stop it from continuing to happen. So it's kind of what I'm trying to put forward is there's so much opportunity in every day. There's so many micro things that we can start feeling good about ourselves immediately, because if we reward ourselves for learning to stop every time something negative happens, we've already transformed it. We've stopped identifying with it, and we start to realize that there's a certain amount of peace and enjoyment and fun that can arise from the very beginning. Like, we don't have to wait to start having fun with this process.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for that. What a delicious and delightful conversation it has been. Yeah, well, as you were speaking, I was just, I don't know where I heard this, but I think it's from India. It was an analogy they were speaking of in India, and they were talking about how the mind is like a garden, and that, you know, it's how this is what it was. It's somehow related. Is that it's important to grow. It's important to grow things. For example, to grow the plants or the vegetables or whatever it is that we want, because otherwise the garden will get overgrown with weeds. and then it will become really hard. There won't be as much space to grow. And it was an analogy for positive and negative thoughts. And I was thinking that when you were saying that, you know, collectively we're in like a, you know, forest is a beautiful place to be, but we're in some, you know, overgrown barren mess, and we're like, flipping heck, what do we do now? It's a bit hard. And like, maybe if there is some space as well in the garden of our minds, of in the collective park of our minds, to just grow some things we want to grow here, and you know, then maybe we'll be nourished from that to then, you know, go about pulling out all these weeds that we've got. So, and that was yeah, just kind of one image that I wanted to bring in as we draw to a close with yeah, our first podcast. And what an honor and a blessing it has been to be here with you.
Thank you, Zoe. Yeah, yeah, it's special. I feel like I've learned from talking to you, and I opened up my own perspective, and yeah, I've just had fun, and I'm just, yeah, I feel like yeah, I feel like this is that things are changing quickly, and you know, the conversation changes quickly, and and I feel like something shifted in you know, we're moving into autumn and we're moving into winter, and maybe there's been a heavy feeling in the air, a heavy atmosphere, that's maybe, I feel like, been around a lot of us because of preconceived ideas about what the future might hold. But recently I felt like things have started to turn, and there's been a few breaks in the clouds, and I'm feeling like that this winter and autumn are like, there's inspiration here, and there's inspiration growing, and there's a engaged will in like showing up next year and showing up now to make next year the one we want to live. So I'm just giving thanks to that shift that I feel like's happened recently.
Yep, that's it. Yeah, we're creating it right here.
Yeah, opening up the veil.
Oh, I love you so much.
Yeah, I love you too, Zoe.
Yes, well, I'm going to end the recording of this now and say yeah, peace out to anyone that watched this. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Thank you for joining us, and I'm sure there's 100% going to be more. So yeah, and best of luck and love and light to you.